Hello, everyone. I'm back. I'm Christina. It's good to see you today. Got my glasses on. All right. So last night, Mike from Around the World and Paul Begley had a chit chat. And so I did take some bullet notes because sometimes it is kind of hard to get through a lot of what they have to say. But Mike is very intelligent too, and he seems to have limitations on exactly what he can say, so he gives like a lot of scenarios, and that's where things can get kind of hairy. So just as a clarification, I do take cliff notes. I don't do transcripts, verbatim of everything that they've said or anybody has said. I pretty much pull the meat out. I write down what I saw, and then I'll leave you the link so you can compare it always. Good to see there's someone here. And I want to also just thank for, just for anyone that sees this later also, that thank you everyone for supporting my channel and all of the new subscribers that I've seen in the last couple of days. That's been super, super encouraging. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get to what Mike and Paul were talking about in a nutshell. Okay. Alrighty. So Paul wants to know, do you have any info on the elections and how the courts are leaning? Because that seems to be something Paul's really into right now. And so that's where he led off. Mike, he says, it's not about the president. It's about checking the pulse of America to influence areas by their belief system in order to manage that populace. It's a big survey machine, is what he said. So that they can adjust their propaganda techniques, right? What has happened now, there was always coming a time that it had to be proven that the belief system would not work. That the system would not work. As far as the American system that we have going on, that eventually we would realize that something is broken. And that borders came down with the internet, which is really true in a lot of ways, because I started getting friends all over the world after that and being able to hear, oh, what do y'all think and what's going on in your area? So yeah, that kind of did. When this election came around, the divide was so huge they couldn't bring the country back together. I don't know who is trying to do that, but yeah, the divide is very, very huge. To bring this country back together would be really nothing short of a miracle if we could find a good common ground. The outcome is not about who wins or loses. Those at the top will be fine, and I think he's talking about officials. Everyone else will be in crisis, those who are elected officials in the middle. Fox News called Trump names and raised the alarm with loyal followers. People found someone who could speak their language, someone who used common sense in his language. 120 million followers for Trump. Their opinions could not be changed, no matter what he did. Tactics had to be discarded after that. There was a type of recruitment process in play, and Mike was stopped with a question from Paul about, are you worried about this million-man march in D.C. for Trump? The first thing that Mike says tells me that he did have one major concern, and that Christians would be tempted to cause harm to our brother, like to start physical fights in the streets with people that have different views. But and I agree with that. I just know that at some point, a lot of us have been having to defend ourselves. So there's kind of a iffy thing on that. But yeah, you shouldn't just outright want to hurt people. Trump loyalty base is growing, getting to the point where things will get legal. Voter count contested. Fraud is an act of tyranny and treason. So, yeah, but when does anybody up there ever get in trouble for anything they've ever done? Hardly ever. Not the highest ups. No, never. Nobody gets touched. But the question in my mind is, like Israel, is there a chance that we could hold a second election? Like, could that be in our future because of the indecision and the fraud that's going on? Sorry, I got friends that want to be famous, I guess. He goes on to say Biden is not idle, talking to world leaders. And I heard that's not cool when you're not exactly inaugurated yet. Something about sedition, I think. Okay, yeah, so Biden's going forward with a win in his head, but president says the courts have to decide this. Both sides are prepared to move forward. This is where the problem is. It doesn't matter how many recounts because people do not trust the system. Here we see the power of the people for the first time since the Civil War. Supreme Courts will be under intense pressure in making this decision. In either scenario, this republic we once had is broken and we're entering into a brand new door. Change is never easy. It can look scary. So he was basically saying there that he thinks that 2021 is going to be really different than what we're used to. So Paul says, is communism part of this thing? Mike said, I don't think socialism or communism cares to what this is. And he stops. He goes, this is more of a kingship with a supernatural tone. And we were just talking about on, I think it was my last video, that the B system that's coming in is coming in on the guise of socialism, communism, but it's really a totalitarian government kind of thing, which is why it would tie into what he's saying. This is more of a kingship with a supernatural tone. He's very artsy about the way that he puts things. You have to really read between lines with this guy. But it's more than a kingship because he goes on to say they're setting themselves up to be deities. The system has drugged us with media and propaganda and believes the future of the United States is going to be in kind of two camps, two different frames of mind. This is about the beast kingdom. He finally says it. Evil embraces you and acts like it has your back, but will betray you when you need them the most. We see potentially scary changes in America because everyone isn't going along with it anymore. No, not everyone is anymore. Men will be more willing to give up their own lives to protect their children. They keep using words like it will be an easy transition, and it is upsetting people. Okay, we're going to stop for just a second before we go on to the next point. Hello, Jeff, and hello, Miss Chavez, Los Angeles. Oh, yeah. Y'all had some action. Not maybe y'all exactly, but I know California had a pretty good earthquake. I think it was this morning, but when I looked on USGS, it just wasn't there anymore. Okay, we got 3 people. Don't forget to hit like. Okay, and we are going to move on. Okay, we're going to go to the next point. Mike had a vision about Trump in a coffin. Paul was asking if there were any new revelations about that. Mike said no. Paul goes on to the next point, asking about fireballs over different nations, talking about Apophis, and he's pointing out that the scientists are realizing that it's coming closer than they thought. They brought up what could be another name for Nibiru behind the sun, but I think that Nibiru would have like moons and other planets around it. So maybe sometime we're seeing some of those moons and planets, and maybe that's why we're seeing some of the different names. Okay. Are we getting slow disclosure about the binary system and the 5 waves of energy? Mike says it's called kibbles and bits. He says, come on, you think they didn't see something behind the sun in a circular orbit? You know, basically you can't hide behind the sun forever. You just can't. Not the way that we orbit. Smaller objects are starting fires. People are realizing that. And it's from debris in space. The volume will increase. We have ozone issues in certain areas. It is like being in a microwave. And this is where we start talking about the sand turning to glass kind of issue, you know, to kind of show how serious these ozone and magnetosphere issues combined are going to affect you as a human, your houses, and the earth itself. And we know that lightning can turn sand into glass, but he's not saying this is turning into glass because of lightning. He's saying it's going to be turned into glass because the sun's rays and the magnetosphere and the ozone in certain conditions in certain areas can heat an area up to 1800 degrees. Okay. But he's saying the ozone problem will not be in the southern hemisphere. The southern hemisphere will have its own problems. Okay. Mike is saying that there's Bible verses about that, and he's right. Men will be scorched by the sun. He's right. I read that too. It's in Revelation. The ozone is now fluctuating so massively that it's hard to keep up with. The weather people are coming up with a new system to give ozone warnings in certain areas so that you know not to be out so you don't burn up in the sun. Okay, he's talking about massive heat in the southern hemisphere. You can't hide a smoking roof on top of your house or melting tar. This could happen this coming summer. Temp is different from how the sun's rays can heat objects that aren't designed to handle it. Imagine the sands begin to vitrify. Vitrify is when the sand turns into glass. A large area in the Middle East has vitrification like from the past. Vitrification, my bad. America also has signs from past vitrification. If the radiation intensifies and the ozone is wide open, the surface can be heated, like I said, up to 1800 degrees. The Earth is absorbing too much radiation. And I think that's what he's saying, that when it releases the energy that it can cause, you'll so that's important. Start looking out on these beaches or in places where there's sand. It can even happen with dirt, I've noticed. Just think your ground starts turning to glass. Watch. You might also be noticing that you're getting burned a lot easier. Even if the temp says, okay, it's 84 degrees outside, but you can still get burned. You know what I mean? Okay. They are formed by the Earth ejecting radiation. So what happens if the mechanism becomes strained? The Van Allen belts shrink and come closer to the Earth, and you can't just pass through these areas without special equipment. Look for the media to begin using the phrase, that's my personal notice, that I would be looking for the media to begin using the phrase electromagnetic hypersensitivity syndrome. So real quick, I thought that it would be really interesting to look up the symptoms of two different things. Symptoms of electromagnetic frequency problems to your body, and symptoms, at least what electromagnetic fields and radiation can do. Let's see, which one is this? Maybe they're both the same thing. I could have sworn one was frequency and one was radiation. Well, it says at low frequencies, external electric and magnetic fields induce small circulating currents within the body. The main effect of radio frequency electromagnetic fields is heating of body tissues, which can also include internal ones. Okay. There is no doubt that short-term exposure to very high levels of electromagnetic fields can be harmful to health. Okay. To your organs, your tissues, your skin, cancer, and Mike had talked about cancer. Here, I'm looking at a PDF file from bccdc.ca, Resource Gallery, Documents and Guidelines. It says reported symptoms described by some individuals to be associated with exposure to electromagnetic frequency: abdominal pain, anxiety, appetite loss, arousal decreased, blood pressure increased, breathlessness, chest pain, concentration difficulties, crankiness, daytime sleepiness, digestive problems, dizziness, dry skin, exhaustion, faintness, fatigue, fear, feebleness, feeling hot, forgetfulness, hair loss, headache, head pressure, heartbeat irregularity, heart palpitation, hormonal disorder, hypersensitivity to medication, hypersensitivity to noise, intestinal trouble, irregular bowel movement, irritation, itching skin, limb pain, metabolic disorder, mood changes, depression, cramps, pain, nausea, neck pain, neuralgia, neurasthenia, numb limbs, phosphenes, rash, restlessness, skin burning, redness, tingling, sleep disturbance, stress, sweating, swollen eyes, swollen joints, tachycardia, which is heart thing, tenseness, tiredness, toothache, trembling, unfeelingness, vision blurring, vomiting, weariness. Okay. Now, I know that that's not radiation necessarily, it's frequency with electromagnetics, but that is more, it's not too far off in relation to some of the effects that you might feel if you were having electromagnetic radiation issues. Okay, you're going to suffer. It's not going to be something that you don't notice. Okay, the way he's talking about it's microwave electromagnetic issue. Okay, that if it can turn sand to glass, you can only imagine what it can do to us. Let's go ahead and check in, everybody. Okay, we got 5 here, 1 thumbs up. That's awesome. Okay, we're going to finish this up with the report. Any information about clusters of asteroids coming? He says we are entering into a violent, chaotic area of space, and what we see now is baby compared to what we will see, and it will change everything forever. The impacts. Are they planning a small evacuation off the planet? Mike basically said no, they're still going underground. And that all the best innovative leaders can't be found. Everyone is mostly already gone. If, and he said this, if in this scenario that could possibly happen, they had underground bases, they would have to acclimate over years. So they would have been gone a long time to deal with the changes in pressure, psychology, lighting, and diet conditions, right? And that it's all the countries in the world have some form of this going on underground. Lots of what if scenarios about underground bunking went on. I kind of just figured y'all could look at that, while they also talked about lawlessness being bred on the surface at the same time, but that they believed it was prophetic because men will hide in the mountains and beg the rocks to fall, and that's also in the Bible. They wanted to make the point that Big Brother is anticipating some pushback from citizens. I think we are too. Everybody here, it doesn't matter what's going on, everybody looks like they're ready to fight. Paul, Trump fired the Secretary of Defense, asked why, and then cut Mike off for a while. And Mike was finally able to get out and say, well, Trump had to get certain people out that aren't good for the nation. The trucker strike, shelves will go empty, but Mike believed this is a catalyst, and that if the truckers do this, others will follow. And they're afraid of what that will do to the country. I guess that goes back to the power of the people, but it can also put our nation in more dire straits than we already are. They're going to have to, because this nation is going through a lot right now. Oh yeah, they're going to try to keep everybody calm. They're going to have to, and other countries are watching us. They talked about possible election result scenarios, and said the Constitution says that if the vote is contested, the vote can be thrown to the House and Trump can be reelected. That's what Paul said. Mike ends with saying, well, at least where I ended, you could listen to the rest yourself, but this is where I was really starting to cross my eyes, because Mike has a very soothing voice that just really calms you in such a way that, I honestly have a hard time not taking a nap at times. But he said this coming year, many things will be made physically clear, and that we'll be in dangerous times. So if you want to hear more on that, there is a link in the description box. Mike will be on next Thursday, and I'll go ahead and take notes on that. I know not everybody's super interested on the notes that I take for Mike from around the world, but for those of you who are, I do it for y'all. Okay. Other news, today is Friday the 13th. It's a day I really just like to stay indoors if at all possible. And I did notice a comment from a commenter yesterday that said that he had gotten the flu vaccine a couple of years later, he was sicker than he'd ever been. And the reason for that, I was a pharmacy technician. I went to school and everything, worked for years and everything. But the way that the flu vaccination works is that when it goes in and acts for your immune system, it causes your immune system to shut down. So the next year, when you get sick, you have zero ability to fight it, and you're way worse. You're way, 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 way worse. Those vaccinations actually kill your immune system. And that's why you get sicker the next year, versus if you would have just let yourself and your body naturally go through that. These colds and these flus often work to improve our immune system. And I'll tell you what, they don't have cures for viruses that I'm aware of, but I'll tell you, vitamin C kicks it for me every single time. Every time. It's like amazing. It's like a miracle. So I keep vitamin C pills, tablets, around the house, Just wanted to say that. Now, We were also talking yesterday about how the nation just seemed to be hinting that they're getting ready to put us through another lockdown, and one that seems like it'll be more permanent. And what do we get in the news? That Chicago's preparing for just that. Are they going to be the last? I doubt it. But they are officially closing for Thanksgiving. Stay away from your families. Stay away from each other. And they were talking at least a month. And let me tell you something. They told us in Houston that those toll booths on the roads would only be there a certain amount of time to pay for the roads, and then they'd be taken down. They were never taken down. They've made billions upon billions of dollars because they won't take them down. Okay. So when they say, oh, it's only going to be for a month, you know what they said last time they locked us down way back in spring? Oh, it'll be just for a month or two. There's a good chance, or it's going to be longer. And in some areas I've heard, oh yeah, you can't even go outside your house. I'm like, oh, that's where I draw the line. If I want to walk outside in my yard, I'm gonna, tell me. Anyway, and also I did also want to end with talking about Nevada had a 5.5 that's going around. But the thing is California at that time, within seconds or minutes, should have had a 5.2 also, but that was missing on USGS, but it was reported by other sources. So what that tells me is that the pressure is getting even worse, especially because I'm starting to see more, what's it called? Earthquake, seismic activity, not just in the West volcanic region of Texas, but more in the middle, like where San Antonio going all the way down to Brownsville. It tells me that the pressure is continuing to move eastward and is getting an average of 38 earthquakes in Texas every month for about last 4 months for sure, that I can think up off the top of my head. And a few years ago, we never even had them. Suddenly we were having 5, then it was 15. And that's usually an indicator of the pressure that's going on the west coast of California. Okay, so I want y'all to always kind of take notice of the activity in Texas, and the magnitudes are climbing too. All right. Okay. All right. I'm going to just look in the chat super fast. Got 72 likes. Awesome. Okay. Then a tunnel of metal in my head makes me wonder how I could be affected. I know, right? Because I've got epilepsy, electromagnetic frequency. I can imagine that it's got to be, and then with radiation, but the frequency, the electromagnetic issues. I've already got epilepsy. Somebody else mentioned they wonder how it would affect Morgellons disease. I thought that was something to kind of check out. Kind of an interesting thought. But it can cause tachycardia, which puts you in the running for sudden cardiac arrest. A lot of you might not know that too. Okay, so what I'm planning to do is definitely take off for the weekend. If something big happens, I'll come in on Sunday. But tomorrow and tonight, I'm going to chill with my familia. All right. I'm always thankful for everyone that has come. We're just going to make this a short, light one. And I just hope all of you are blessed in Jesus' name. And I'll talk to you soon. Okay. Bye, everybody.